Hi friends! Today we're going to talk about delivery, and this is going to be a little bit different than what I would normally say because of this being an online situation for the rest of your speeches. But we're still going under the idea that public speaking should be audience-centric. It should be focused on how you can build and maintain relationships with your audience. It's not a performance, so it's not about being overly rehearsed or performing or doing things perfectly. It's not about saying things in the right way at the right time with the right gestures. And so I want you to kind of take that pressure off of yourself once again, that you don't have to be perfect. And in fact, we talked about earlier that perfection is inaccessible and it's actually a barrier to relating to your audience. And so that's really the guiding principle that that you should be considering whenever you are thinking about your delivery. So what I want you to do is embrace your humanity. You're having a conversation with your audience. You're not having a performance. And so performance is kind of inhumane, or is inhuman in ways, not inhumane. Whereas a conversation is normal. It's every day. And so when you are in a conversation, we're going to start off with talking about what we do with our voices, non-verbally. When you're in a normal conversation, you make mistakes. You say things the incorrect way. You sound weird sometimes. You are quirky. You sound quirky, and that's great. You have a personality, and so your personality should definitely come out when you're giving a speech. You see this every day when I'm teaching, that I make mistakes. I can't think of words sometimes. I can't think of what I'm going to say next sometimes, and that's okay. I stutter sometimes, and you know what? That doesn't make me less of a public speaker. So if you normally stutter in conversations, it's completely acceptable to stutter in public speaking situations too. If you normally say in an everyday conversation, it's okay to say in a public speech. It's just, you want to make sure that you're not saying it so much that's distracting from your speech and distracting your audience. But it's okay to say it sometimes. That's completely normal. People say like a lot when they're having conversations, and that's okay. What we want to hear is what you normally do in a conversation. And one thing that you always do in a conversation is you speak at different speeds. When you're passionate, when you're excited, you either slow down and you emphasize every word, or you speak really, really fast to show that you're excited about what you're talking about. And so it's really odd when we attempt to speak at the same speed the entire time and there's no variation in what it sounds like, because it sounds, even if you're not monotone, it will make it sound monotone. Speaking of monotone, that's next on the list. So it's really important that you vary your pitch so that you keep your sound interesting, because you don't speak monotone. That's not normal. While it may be technically perfect, it will sound very weird and robotic. So instead, you vary that pitch. You vary your speed. You vary your, we're going to go ahead and start transitioning to your gestures and your facial expressions in just a minute. But you vary your, I can't think of the word. See, it happens to all of us, and that's okay. Your volume. So sometimes if you want your audience to lean in with expectation, you're not going to be yelling at them. You're going to be speaking very quietly. Other times, when you want to emphasize a point or emphasize your passion, you're going to get a little bit louder, and that's completely acceptable. What you want to keep in mind is, if you're doing an in-person speech, that you gauge the size of the room and make sure that you're not speaking so loud that you're hurting your audience's ears, or so quiet that the people in the back of the room can't hear you. So you want to make sure that you're very mindful of that. So now we are going to transition to gestures and facial expressions. So I would normally spend a lot of time talking about whenever you're giving a speech, you should be planting your feet. You should make sure that you're not swaying. So that may mean if you normally are very animated in a speech and you move a lot, if you normally pace, you may move with intention. That may be very difficult for some of you to work through when you're doing your speech online because you may not have anyone available to video you. If you do, I would love for you to stand up and allow me to and your audience to see your whole body, and you can use space to communicate, meaning sometimes you get closer, sometimes you're more far away. And we would spend a lot of time talking about the use of space and its impact on delivery if we were in person. But we're not, and that's okay. So we're going to really spend much more time talking about gestures and facial expression. So when you're in person, your gestures typically you have a sphere. They don't come any higher than mid-forehead, and they don't go any lower than your belly button. That's kind of like the sphere or the circle of really effective gestures. If you're any bigger, you seem scattered and you seem a little manic. You seem a little uncontrolled. And if you're any smaller, if your gestures are much smaller than this area, meaning you have a smaller circle, you seem much more nervous and you're much more likely to pick your fingers. In normal conversation, our gestures are like this, or in this kind of sphere this kind of circle that we've talked about. And so you want to make sure that you keep that, keep it in that circle. There may be times when it's more informal and you have a certain relationship with your audience that you can do the bigger gestures sometimes when you're intentionally going above and beyond what's normal. That can be completely effective. But for your normal speech, you're probably not going to do that. What I do want to see is I still want to see gestures even if you are, even if you're just showing as much as I'm showing in your speech. I do still want to see some gestures because it helps keep your audience interested. Because just seeing your face can sometimes get really boring, and we need to see that animation. And your gestures help you emphasize your excitement about your topic. Your delivery is what connects your audience and helps them understand your relationship to the topic. Because your delivery is how you communicate your passion, your excitement, your care for the material above and beyond your speaker credibility statement. Let's talk about facial expressions. This is my pet peeve, to be honest, because you can really tell how connected someone is to their topic based off of their facial expressions. Personally, you can tell I'm very expressive. My eyebrows move a lot, and that may be really abnormal for some of you. But everyone has some expressions. Your eyes change, you smile, you're the corner smile. When you're being really serious, you frown. That's great. I want you to do all of those things, whatever your normal facial expressions are. That's what I want you to do when you're giving your speech. What I don't want to see is just giving your speech like this the entire time. And even I struggle to do that because you're literally holding your emotion back. I think that we think that emotions in a speech, for some reason, us displaying emotions in a speech is not a good idea. But that's not true. It would be weird to be talking about something very serious or something that you care a whole lot about and not have facial expressions, showing your emotions and showing that you care about what you're talking about. But this leads to us questioning how much you care about your topic if you're completely expressionless during the entire thing. It may also lead us to question your credibility, whether or not you really know what you're talking about, whether or not you are really prepared for the speech. So here's the TLDR. When in doubt, do what's ever natural. Stutter. Say words incorrectly. Use facial expressions. Use jazz hands. Do the gestures. Whatever you would normally do in a conversation, that's what I want you to do. Because that's when you're going to be your most authentic, your most believable, that's when we're going to connect with you the most. Whatever you do in a conversation, that's what we want to see. That's what's going to be enjoyable. That's what's going to keep attention above and beyond what you're saying. Don't try to be perfect. Just be yourself. All right. That's all for delivery today. If you have questions, feel free to ask. But don't stress about it too much. You're just fine-tuning at the point that we're talking about delivery. All right. Talk soon. Bye.